Welcome to the Peak Revival podcast. My name is Vesna. I'm going to talk about the 4 pillars of high-performing gut and microbiome and why it matters. Now, there's lots of advice for gut health, and I've definitely done podcasts on this. And today I really want to talk about, well, what is a high-performing gut? Why does it matter in everything that you do? Because it has such an impact on our emotional well-being and our energy levels. And I'm going to talk about 4 pillars that will help to give you the really good baseline of gut health. So there are specifics that we can do when it comes down to microbiome testing. So testing, the beneficial bacteria that we have in our gut, and also the non-beneficial or the bacterial overgrowth that we have. When we do those microbiome testing, we can have a look in a lot more detail and get more specific in treatments of herbal medicines, supplementation, probiotics, and etc. But even without that, what are the 4 pillars that lead to a healthy gut, which we should have in practice now and maintain? And I'm really going to show the gaps. And they're significant, right? So quite often what I see is that women are like, I eat pretty well. And you'll see as I go through this episode that actually you could do a lot better to maintain the microbiome. That's kind of hands down in the Western world, in the Western diet. So why having a healthy gut or high-performing gut and microbiome really matters is because if you're a high performer and you're busy and you've got a lot on your plate, then what you're going to notice is that a high-performing gut means you're going to have a lot more mental clarity. So you'll have less brain fog, you'll have better hormone or neurotransmitter levels in the brain. So just mental clarity, mental focus, a lot more bandwidth, a lot more capacity to take more work on, work deep focus. Because the gut is connected to the brain via the vagus nerve. We know that there's this massive connection between gut health and what's going on up here. So mental focus, clarity, bandwidth, but emotional resilience or emotional balance, right? So I notice that my clients will often say when we do gut work, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like a roller coaster anymore, right? I feel much more emotionally regulated. And that's one of the things that's really noticeable with doing gut work. Your energy goes up. It also helps with hormone balancing and stress recovery. So those are all the reasons why it matters. And it also helps to drive down inflammation. Like there's such a huge part of our gut health that impacts every aspect of our life, from how we feel to how we perform. So let's get into it. Pillar number 1 is diversity. This is the one thing that our Western diet does not have, okay? So it's shown that on average, women have between 10 to 12 foods that we recycle each week, okay? So very, very low diversity. And that means our gut microbes aren't getting the diversity that they need for the fuel. If you're eating the same things all the time for a long time, then it's linked to inflammation. It's linked to irritable bowel syndrome. It's linked to weight gain, anxiety, and mood disorders, right? Because the population of the microbiome is not diverse, okay? Low diversity in food, low diversity in microbiome. And so therefore we want to make sure that we have a good range and variety of different foods, and I'm going to go through which ones, because it supports serotonin production. That's a happy mood neurotransmitter. Helps to regulate our immune system, gives us clearer thinking, and stabilizes our mood. So what are the things that you want to increase? I mean, the first thing, pretty basic, is having a lot more vegetables and even fruits, right? Really rotating, getting as like up to 20 or more than 20 a day, right? Different fruits, vegetables, legumes that will help to increase the diversity of the microbiome. So like I said, we tend to focus on the same 10 to 12 all through the week, and we don't get much variety. And so things like polyphenols are really important to add, found in berries and herbs and spices and green teas. The coloured, like the purple grape, they help to add these polyphenols, which help to fuel the microbiome. You can also add in there dark chocolate and pomegranate and, like I said, red grape. So all of those help to give fuel for the microbiome, but overall we need to increase the diversity of the vegetables and also our fruits as well. I'll always say, where possible, and if you can, for everything, do organic, because the pesticides are basically antibiotics for the gut. And so they're going to kill off the good bacteria. So wherever you can, and really aim to do that as much as you can, is buy organic in your fruits and veg. So number 1, like I said, was diversity. Number 2 is prebiotics. There's a lot of talk about probiotics. We know about different, probiotics in a capsule that's worth 30 tubs or however much they say of yogurt, which is actually rubbish. That's not true, because even though they're the quantity of beneficial bacteria in the capsule is higher, the utilization and how much it has an effect is much lower, right, than actually yogurt. So, or some of them. So, bit of a marketing ploy. Prebiotics are fuel for the microbiome. So probiotics supplement good bacteria, but prebiotics feed what you currently have, right? And so nourish and fuel and give it energy for the current microbiome that you have in your gut already. Now, prebiotics also help to produce short-chain fatty acids, and this is all important in the gut to reduce inflammation, to improve insulin sensitivity, so your glucose levels. It regulates your appetite, regulates your weight. It's important for gut lining and leaky gut and strengthening your immunity. So here are some examples, and you can get this through your diet, like sauerkraut and kefir and things like that, help to provide a prebiotic. You can also take it in a supplement. So there are different supplements like GOS, which is galacto-oligosaccharides, or FOS, FOS, which is fructo-oligosaccharides, long names, but what they help to do is feed the good bacteria that's already there. So this is a really good baseline. Like, you don't have to start adding probiotics yet. You could literally do this and it starts to nourish your gut microbiome, and you already start having the effects of improved immunity, less inflammation, better moods, because your current bacteria is getting the fuel that it needs. The other things included in there are resistant starch, like cooled potatoes and rice, green bananas, beta-glucans like oats and mushrooms. So there's a lot of different foods that you can include, but also supplementation for the prebiotics. Really, really key. Pillar 3 is combining prebiotics with probiotics. So we've got the prebiotics, which is the fuel for the microbiome that you currently have, and then the probiotics, which is adding the microbiome into it. So the important thing to notice is most probiotics will give you the bacteria while you're taking it. And then when you stop, that stops too, right? And so that's why we need the prebiotics, because it'll keep feeding what's there, because otherwise we have to stay on probiotics for a very long time. So the prebiotics I already talked about are a really good baseline probiotic. I mean, you can get it through yogurt. Surprisingly, there's a lot of studies with Yakult. Different strains do different things. And, just like you have a herbal medicine dispensary with all these different herbs for different conditions, the same applies for probiotics. Every different strain is targeting something different, but you can get a really good baseline probiotic that is kind of like the core architecture of the microbiome or the microbiota. And you're looking at a combination of, your lactobacillus and your bifido together will help to provide that core architecture with the probiotics to really nourish the gut environment. And pillar number 4 is microbiome stability. So it's one thing to supplement your way through this. It's another thing to really pay attention to, what is breaking down the microbiome. So we need to encourage that environment in the gut. We need to feed it. We need to nourish it. But then we also need to make sure we don't have those habits that destroy the microbiome. So medications like antibiotics will literally wipe out your gut flora. I mean, you've heard of this, but you probably don't know that one round of antibiotics can completely make some microbiome extinct, never to be returned, which is pretty scary. If you've had multiple courses of antibiotics or combination of antibiotics at one time for resistant bacteria, then that can even have a more impact on the gut, right? Really wiping out the gut microbiome. Aspirin and painkillers will also have an effect on the gut microbiome. But the things that we have every day is processed foods. It has huge impact on the microbiome, okay? Wiping out some of that microbiome. Not extinct, but wiping it out, right? Sugary foods and processed foods, all of that have a negative impact on the gut. And we want to make sure that we keep that an absolute minimum or completely remove processed foods altogether from the diet. So that's one part. So we're looking at medication, we're looking at diet, but then we're also looking at stress, because stress has a huge impact on the gut microbiome. It creates leaky gut, disrupts the internal environment, and disrupts that natural balance, right? Sleep is also key. They found that after 48 hours of poor sleep, the gut microbiome is already altered. Right? And so sleep is important, and nervous system regulation. So making sure that your nervous system is not stuck in that high alert mode, which is something that I see all the time. Women become accustomed to that level because, we get used to operating at that high alert zone, and we don't realize that it's draining our system and also draining the microbiome. So just to rehash, number one, we want the diversity. We want more vegetables, more fruits, more different ingredients, rotating foods, not having the same foods every week. You want to include prebiotics, the things that fuel the microbiome that you currently have, provided nutrition help to grow. Then prebiotics or symbiotics, so adding the prebiotics and the probiotics together. Okay, so a really good baseline probiotic I mentioned, and they work together to feed what you've got, create more. Okay, and then pillar number 4 was looking at stability, looking at the other things that will wipe out your microbiome or even make it extinct, which is scary. So wherever you're at, if you've got gut symptoms or you feel like you've got brain fog and your moods are up and down, then I'd definitely be looking at your gut health. And these are the very simple things that you can do without starting any testing. Testing's always recommended. But if you're in a place where you're like, I'm not sure, but I want to start on something, this is what I would recommend. I'd love to hear your comments below.